Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Midwest Artisan. I'm your host, Andy Hinkle.
And I'm Andy's buddy, Dalton, your co-host.
Dalton, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Hey, yeah, we finally got together. We went to a hockey game.
Hey.
Me and you, we got our wives together. We went to dinner, went to a hockey game. It was like a minor league hockey game.
Yeah.
It wasn't just minor league. It was like a few levels below minor league. So they're good. It was entertaining. But we saw the Evansville Thunderbolts. They're a part of the SPHL. And I had to look up what the heck that is. You kind of like gave me a little bit of information, and then sent me down a rabbit hole after the game. I was like, where are they ranked, competitively? So you have the NHL, and I did some research on this. You may already know, but just for the dear listener out there.
Yeah.
We have the NHL. And then below that, we have the AHL, the American Hockey League. And if you're listening to the show, Dalton is doing a tiered list here.
I got the visuals.
With his hands. Yeah. So we have NHL, then the AHL, American Hockey League. Then, so the AHL is I learned they're more of a feeder teams, or they're feeder teams into the NHL. So if somebody gets injured or something, they're sending up players to NHL. So then you have the ECHL, which is below the AHL, and if you're keeping up, so that's the East Coast Hockey League. Then below that, you have what's called the SPHL, the Southern Professional Hockey League. That's where our wonderful team of the Evansville Thunderbolts are located. So is the SPHL. So let me tell you, that is some entertaining hockey. The Thunderbolts, I think they were, correct me if I'm wrong, but they were like 7th out of 10 in the league or something like that, or in their region. Something. But
yeah, they were, and it's interesting that you bring this up because we're going to a hockey game tonight to see the Thunderbolts again. Ironically, they've been on quite a hot streak recently, so they were 7th place when we went a couple weeks ago. They are in the semifinals tonight.
What?
Against the number 2 seed team in their region right now. And it's a best 2 out of 3 game, and they've already beaten this other team, the Peoria Rivermen. They already beat this other team at their place. So if they win tonight, they're going to the finals of their region. So they're kind of on a hot streak since.
Wow, that's wild. And personally, I love to go for the fights. I think if you're a fan of watching the hockey fights, absolutely wild. And so whether it was fueled by just the pure hatred of the other opponents, I guess, or just deep love of the game, they're just putting it all on the ice. But I didn't know that. I thought being 7th of 10 in the league, they wouldn't make it to their semifinals or their playoff play, whatever it is. But I thought that's awesome. But it was a really good evening. One of my favorite moments came from you, and then hearing you talk about this, you're passionate about how you're passionate about hockey, but you look over and you go, "Hey, our goalie, he's pretty good." So I've heard, and so honestly, that was the most sports related thing I've ever heard you say. And so coming from a guy who you would look physically pained when I talked about football or sports or anything when we worked together, you just kind of roll your eyes. Hey, did you watch the game last night? No.
Sorry.
It was a good time.
Yeah, it was really good. I'm glad you came. I think we had a great time. If they go to the finals, they go to the finals next week.
Gotta go.
So I'm hoping, like you, I got into hockey quite late, especially in this season. I don't normally like sports. I always played at sports events for band because I was a band nerd. So I just, sports lame, right? But now that they're in the semifinals, I'm hoping for a real heated, especially since they already beat this team on their home turf. And if they beat them again on our home turf, they go to the finals. I'm expecting I'm expecting the game to go 3 hours because they're going to fist fight everybody on the roster. Is my hope.
Love it. Yeah.
So I love it.
Yeah.
I don't know any of the rules. I don't know any of the player names. I just know the goalie's good or whatever. And apparently he's in the top 3 of whatever league they're in. I don't know. I like it. It's fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Yeah. I just love it because that's the most I've ever seen you get in sports. So I was like, yes.
Hockey's my jam. I don't know what it is.
Hockey talk. Yeah.
It's my jam.
Hey, folks, we have some shout-outs. It's just long overdue. People reach out either on Twitter or Blue Sky, wherever the case, or even on other podcasts. So other podcasts, we have North Meets South, which is Jake Bennett, Michael Dorinda. Very kind of similar podcast to what we have going on. They talk about just Boss Jake. They talk about work happenings and whatever else. And I think I've talked about them many times. They're just I love their show. But shout out to him. He called us at the beginning of the show. He said we're semi-organized with our show notes, which might honestly be the most accurate description of our podcast yet. It's just semi-organized. We got this little Trello board, which helps us remember what we ran into since last episode. But let's be honest, it's like usually like 3 to 4 weeks ago. So it's just more to like jog our memory. And also shout out to the Trello background themes. I'm staring at it now. Ours is the background theme is literally a cornfield. It's like a random picture of a cornfield on the side of a road. I didn't pick it when I typed in like the Midwest Artisan as the title. It was like, here's some recommended themes, and it was like a cornfield. I'm like, yep, perfect. That looks like my drive on the way to the grocery store. It worked for me. So thanks for the shout out from Jake and Michael. Justin Jackson, this is like a month ago at this point, but he maybe more like a couple months now. He congratulated us on our new jobs and mentioned how weird it must be for us to be in 2 separate places after 8 years of working together. So appreciate you, Justin. And he's such a good dude. I met him a few times now, and most recently I had lunch with him at Laracon in Dallas. But I first met him back in Laracon, New York 2, which is like the 2019, I think it was. He was the MC, and he ended up sitting next to a group of us at lunch, and man, he was just like a ball of energy when he came to the table. He was just so super curious about everyone, where they work, what they're doing, what they're how they got to Laracon, etc. Just their life story. And I remember thinking like, man, I need to take a page out of his book and put myself out there more, and just love that guy. So but yeah, it was very nice of him to reach out and congratulate us. So thanks for that, Justin. And then lastly, Jason Beggs. Or honestly, if you have any shout outs, tell me. Just some I jotted down on my list here, but if you had any more. But Jason Beggs, he's always dropping helpful feedback after episodes. Like he'll DM me on Twitter. He'll be like, hey, like we talked about the carbon type hinting thing. That was just the first one that comes to mind. But he's like, maybe it's happening because of this or that. But he's always looking out for us and checking in on asking how things are going and asking about how the new job's going. So just that kind of support really sticks out. And just another example of how great the Laravel community is. So we appreciate all the kind words and check-ins. So good folks all around. It really keeps us going. So much appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
I was listening to all these, like, man, we can get less love. We just need to get some shout outs out there. So much appreciated.
Love received, cool. Love returned. Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Yes. Back to our semi-organized show. We'd love to talk about the gateway pattern. We also have the swapping legacy system and keeping data integrity. And so I think that was something you added, which I have a lot of. I'm really curious on that one too, because I've done that numerous times.
I figured you would.
So yeah. Mm-hmm. And then some personal websites of how we like to automate them. And so I think that'll be a fun one, just because you and I are both we love doing things like this, but just having to constantly maintain your personal website. So some things, some tips in there to keep it automated. We could talk about that. And and then some things we might be able to get to is the cursor update, the cursor editor, and just AI in general. I feel like there's this big shift going on right now, and I hate talking about AI because I feel like everyone's talking about it, it's just not entertaining. But because I have some workflow things that have changed for me recently, so just curious there.
Little tease.
Yeah. So gateway pattern. A while back, we touched on the idea of one of our shows. We talked about the idea of using local fakes or mocks for services. So something lightweight to help during development. And Jake introduced me to how they do their gateway pattern, and I love it. It's been really nice to work with. the basic idea of this is like you're talking to an external API directly. And actually, North Meets South, they just talked about this same subject. I had it on our list, and I was like, oh, well, they're going to talk about it too. So, but
Jake.
I have some, yeah, shout out Posh Jake. So the idea is instead of talking to the external API directly, like Stripe, you go through a local gateway. Stripe's local. Stripe's a good example, actually. So you use the card numbers like 424242, whatever, you simulate a charge. Then if you want a bad charge, like a decline, you do like, I think it's like 4,000, and then you do all zeros, but the last number is like, I think it's a 1 or a 2. You do it for a decline. So normally in development, you might be calling Stripe Sandbox API with those numbers. And so even the Laravel docs recommend that you hit their sandbox directly. They suggest you don't mock it, you just hit it directly. And so we did that on a project a while back, and our test suite ended up taking a long time to run through all the tests, either on locally and through CI. So if we want to push a quick change, we're like, all right, gonna take a little break, come back, right? So you remember those days?
Take a lunch break, 20-minute. I mean, because we had to test so much stuff with Stripe, right? Create this user, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, way too long.
Yeah, but with the gateway pattern, you abstract it behind a service. So it'd be like a service provider, and so you create, along with the service provider, you would have these two different gateways. You would have like a fake gateway, and then the production gateway. So, and then each one of these services would have the same interface. So you'd be like get invoices or like your API calls that you're actually going to make. So you have two implementations, one for production, calls the real actual, obviously the real API, then one for local dev, and you might even have a third for like sandbox. And in your service provider, you bind the implementation based on the environment. So you could just do a simple conditional in there. And if you have something like I just talked about, more complex, like a sandbox one, or I've been kind of leaning towards environment variables, because there's been times where like, okay, I actually do want to test the production, and then you have to comment out the production line. So it's the best part is like local or testing. When you're on local, when you're writing your test, you don't have to mock the API responses. It just, because it goes to the fake gateway, it doesn't care, right? So when you're writing your test, or when you're working locally, it's hitting the same fake gateway. You don't have to write the mocks, the no more HTTP fake or anything. So that sounds really appealing to me, stuff like that.
Agreed.
Yeah. So
anything to not do those mocks.
Yeah. There are some cons, but I think the pros heavily weigh out the cons. Like, we'll just talk about the cons first. Of like, you do have some drift of like real world behavior, and I've run into this a few times of like where we'll have a mock, but then maybe the response isn't what the documentation says the response is. How many times does that happen? But I think the trade-offs on the flip side, it makes testing way easier, consistent, speeds up local development. The good old separation of concerns. So just allows for easier testing. You don't have to know if you're hitting a fake or a real service. And, no worrying about like hitting rate limits on sandbox API environments or testing credentials or the worst case, or the worst thing possible, and hitting the production API locally when you don't realize it. So I think all of us are guilty of that. But so I'm just curious about your thoughts here. Have you used this, or we're integrating with a third-party API in the future? Would you think about reaching for something like this?
Most of the time, no. Unless it's something wicked complicated, then I probably would. There have been several instances where I wish I would have, because the API was super simple when I started out. It's like, oh, just easy. You call the HTTP facade, get what I want, done and done. I can fake that pretty easy in the test. The HTTP fake is pretty easy compared to just like a normal mock. Mm-hmm. But in the instance of like Stripe is a great example. I would love to have done this gateway pattern on that site that we were working on, because instead of waiting 20 minutes for tests to run, just to essentially save, the customer ID in the database so that the site could see that it was a real customer, isn't necessary, in my opinion. So something like this would be perfect for that. So anything wicked complicated. So gateway pattern would be perfect for those large scale integration things. If you're just going to call like the YouTube API and say, hey, give me all the YouTube videos for this channel, it might be a little bit too much boilerplate for that. But if you're going to build out like a whole YouTube scraper, probably should look at doing something other than trying to fake and mock a bunch of stuff in your tests, because you're never going to get it one-to-one. And if they change the API, then now you're screwed. Now you got to change all of those tests. So yeah, pros and cons. I probably wouldn't reach for it unless it was something big, like a big site.
And I could see Laravel's side of it, because Stripe is so fluent, and Laravel's been vocal about their API changes of how they've been frustrating over the years, like some breaking changes. So I can see on their side of like, test the sandbox API, because if something goes wrong, you really, especially when you're dealing with payments, you probably want to determine that. So I can see like actually wanting to hit a sandbox. And I think in some cases, I think in CI, I would love to hit a sandbox, but I think locally, it's just like you want to get going, you want to move quickly. And so it would be nice to have like in this pattern of like you can either have production, sandbox, or local, where it's just completely faked and you don't have to think of anything. I would love to see something like where it uses maybe like the either Saloon package or the Laravel HTTP facade or something where it hits more of those directly. Like you can set up some mocking through there, maybe snapshots, like you hit a production API and
That's
then
a good idea.
It makes a snapshot response based off of that and makes maybe a fake, like the use of the faker class. So there's a package idea I've been like thinking about, but
I like that.
Of something like where it can implement this gateway pattern where it can create a fake generated from the response of that. Saloon is something where it can kind of generate like DTOs from the response, but it doesn't generate like a fake response. They don't have anything like that. So it's a kind of a really interesting concept, and I've been really a big fan of it lately.
Ooh, if you can make that package and make it like super smart, like where it just like web scrapes all of the Stripe API documentation, it takes those test responses and saves them in like a cache or something or whatever. So whenever you call customers, it has that response instead of hitting production and faking that response. Like primo.
Getting my wheels turning, because theoretically you could give it like the Swagger JSON, like you could just plug in Swagger JSON and generate it from that. So got my wheels turning. We may have to collaborate on this idea.
Yeah. So, that's good.
Cool.
I like that idea.
Yeah, we'll have to come back to. We'll have to revisit this and see. Do we build a package?
Yeah, TBD.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah, sounds good. All right, you have the next one, which is I'll let you take this one.
Okay, yeah, I'm curious on what you would do first, because to give you the context, there are two applications that I work on currently. There's an old version of it that's written in Vue, and it has a Laravel API backend, right? Two separate things. And then there's a new version of this app that's built strictly in Laravel and Filament, right? It's essentially the same app, just rebuilt in Filament, so it's easier to maintain. There's nobody who works on Vue.js here where I work. So we were going to rewrite it in Filament. Problem is, now that you have these two systems and you want to switch some of the users from the old system to the new system without losing any data, and you still want some people to use the old system but not the new system. You follow me so far? So you've got this system, this system. They both share one database that has, some common things in it, but they both have two separate databases for the users. Right? So you've got users over here and you've got users over here and a couple common tables in the middle. How in the world do you get some users from the old system to the new system and keep them in sync with their user tables?
So
it's a nightmare.
When you talk about just the migrations, they're two separate apps, right? And you want to merge them, right?
Yeah. What's like the first thing that comes to your head when you're like, I want to move some people over and keep some other people on the old one, but I also don't want to lose any data integrity from like the users table from one system to the other.
Feature flags.
You set up some cron jobs that say, hey, sync the users from this system to that system back and forth. And how often do you do that? How stuff like that.
Yeah, I'd probably do feature flag. That's where I'd lean of like of their migration. Yeah, and just do like 10 at a time and just see how it goes, and then just make slow incremental, migrations, and then it'll just help uncover things slowly instead of like flipping the switch and then all hell breaks loose.
Right.
But so yeah, I'd probably just reach behind a feature flag of like if tenant A, tenant B. That's where you talked about multi-tenancy. It just becomes a mess. But we talked about it on the show before, but I hate the idea of adding code just for migration purposes and then having to go in and rip it out again later. It just
Agreed.
It just feels dirty adding it in. So, but for, like if you did a multi-tenant setup in that case, and then you have to rip it back out.
Yeah.
So did you end up solving this, or
Yes.
is it current? Okay, let's hear it.
It is a very clever solution that I didn't think of. Shout out to my boss Jeff. He figured it out. We were on a pair programming session for a couple hours trying to figure out. We were going down the same route that you had initially started. We were like, we'll do some feature flags. Maybe there's a column in the database that say this user uses the new system, this user uses the old system. And we'll set up some cron jobs to essentially sync that data back and forth from system A to system B based on whatever that flag is, right? And there are some changes from database to database. Like the old database uses usernames and the new database uses emails, but the old system was still just like the email address was the username, so it wasn't that crazy. But it was like this weird complicated of like username's email, email's username on the sync. So Jeff had the idea of why don't we migrate all of the users from the old system to the new system's database once instead of continuously, and then we set the database connection of the old system to the new system so that everybody logs in and still pulling the user data from the new system, but they see the old system. Unless we do that feature flag of, hey, they can now see the new system. So everybody's still using the new system's database, but can see the old system. And there's no syncing, and it's just that.
Yeah.
I think he did it in like an hour.
Wow.
And like everybody, there were a couple bugs.
Really clever.
To be fair, there were some bugs, but I was like, that's clever as hell.
Yeah.
You do the migration once and just point the database connection, for the user's model to the new system instead of the old system. And then boom.
So to be clear, all users are using the same table now, no matter what. Like
Yes.
that's explicit.
Yes.
Every user's on the new system.
Correct.
Like as far as the users table goes, but then
Yep.
every other like table is just there's a feature flag, and then that'll do like a database connection name and then flip between the two. Oh man, that is
Correct.
really clever. I like that.
Very clever.
Yeah, simple way.
So instead of trying to keep all of this data in sync constantly and managing who can use what system, it's everybody uses the same database system, but just that feature flag says, oh, you go to this site or this site, but the connection stays the same based on that feature flag. Very clever. And it was going to be such a headache the way that we were going down it, to keep it in sync and who can do what and who can do this. Super clever. I would have never thought of that in, I wouldn't say a million years, but probably like 100 hours of pair programming. That would probably be my last thought, of just do all the migration now and not have any. I think there was maybe like 10 minutes of downtime, if that.
How did the migration go? Because that's where I would have some caution about moving everyone at once. I may want to do like I said earlier, a feature flag of just 10 users. Okay, let's see how that goes. Okay, let's do 50, and then let's see how that goes. And maybe if everything is thumbs up, no problems, we flip the switch and let everybody in. But just like, did you do like a incremental migration, or is it just like whoop, flip everything over?
Just everybody. I mean, we did some testing, right? Like, let's change this little flag for, this user. Let's see if, because he has a user himself. He's like, okay, let me copy my user over to the new system, see if I can log in to the old system and see if it hits the new system's database. Oh, that works. Cool. Let's move everybody over. Just swap, hey, the username is now mapped to the email column. Bing, bang, boom. There were some code changes that we had to make, like whenever you're looking for a user instead of, where username, we had to swap it to, where email, et cetera, et cetera. But for the most part, it was done in like a day. We were like,
Wow.
man, it's going to take several days for us to plan and map it out and write all the code and do it. And in that pair programming session, he's like, let's just do it this way. And I think the next morning he had already had it done, and we were
Wow.
good to go.
Yeah. Well said. Wow. Love it. Yeah. When you write a migration like that, like an actual database migration, if that was the case, it's always scary when you run that, because as soon as it'll say like migrating, you'll see the ... and you're like, that's all you know. And then you have to like go poke around the database table to make sure it's working. You're really just trusting that it's working, and then if something goes wrong, you're like halfway in a migration and it fails. Oh man, that's just,
now you're screwed.
Yeah, it could get a little scary. So
yeah, now you're screwed. So it was very clever. I don't know if anybody else has situations of migrating legacy systems to new systems by keeping the same data, but this worked out well for us. I mean, this was over a week ago at this point, and again, there were a couple bugs, a couple code changes to say, hey, where username to where email. Otherwise, been fine. And nobody's none the wiser, except for us. We know.
Yeah, one thing I did before on an app was I created like a temporary table. So I had an Artisan command that kind of did the migration that would move, old records to new records. But I didn't want it to go to production right away. The other thing is we already had new productions writing to the production database. Like it was already live, and I needed to move these existing records over there. So what I did is I created a temporary table and ran the Artisan command just to see what would happen. So I basically created a clone of the table, put it in here, and then because I didn't want to bring the data in locally, because it was a lot of data, and two, I didn't want to have that on my local machine. And so what I did is I created an Artisan command that wrote to the temporary table, and again I had to put that temporary code out in production. I hated that part, but it allowed me to like see if there was going to be any migration issues, like migrating the table from A to B to the new columns. And it actually did. Like it showed some issues of like, there'd be like a dash there'll be like an empty like an empty string instead of like a nullable, or like a dash character instead of a nullable, or stuff like that. It's just like where it's expecting a character, like a certain character set. So it allowed me to identify those issues that only people in production would end up doing. Cool. Anything else you wanted on legacy on that? I love that. The idea you guys came up with.
Very, very clever. Again, shout out Jeff, my boss Jeff. I'm gonna start calling him Boss Jeff.
Boss Jeff.
Have
boss
yours,
Jake.
boss Jake.
JJ. Yeah.
So yeah, shout out Jeff.
Cool. Yeah. The next topic I want to talk about is personal websites, and you and I both have personal websites, andyhinkle.com and
DaltonMcCleary.com.
There you go.
Easy peasy.
Yeah, simple enough. Everything on there is fully automated except for like the blog posts and obviously if I want to make some changes or whatever. But for example, this podcast tomorrow at 10 a.m. I'll have a pull request open to merge it into as content on the site. And so I prefer that over like just automatically adding it to a database record. Just for multiple reasons. Just for like if I ever decide to not, like, the site doesn't even have a database. So if I decide to move it somewhere else or just change how I want to display the content, I don't have to deal with migrations or whatever. It's just like, just add this field or whatever, make it work. But anyway, how it works is there's just a GitHub action that runs daily at 10 a.m. It'll check Transistor for any new episodes. And so it'll go through and then if there is a new episode, it'll automatically create a markdown file from the content. So how it works is it creates the markdown, it uses the title, it puts in the date, and then it'll do a description. And my favorite thing, it'll download the transcriptions about what we say. Because I have the transcription on the site. It'll be like a text file.
Nice.
Displays those on the site. So creates NPR, and then the tests will run. I have this podcast model. This podcast model it's a sushi type model, like by Caleb Porzio. And how it works is the rows in the model are my markdown records from resources, inside my resources folder, I have the markdown like resources, podcasts, whatever episode it is. So it pulls from there, and then each of the attributes, so it'll be like published at : the date. And so that would be like one of the fields. So you could just natively pull like using Eloquent, you query like, hey, I want on this page, I want to show this podcast title or whatever. Or in my case, it just lists all the episodes in order by the published at attribute. So works really nicely, fully automated. Like I said, it'll come into pull request tomorrow. And that also allows me to make little changes if I want to for SEO or whatever. I can tweak it slightly. I like it a lot. Makes it really easy.
Very clever.
I love sushi. Not the food, but
I love
the
sushi
package.
too.
The package, it's so good. Just like it allows you to just to use Eloquent, and your code is really clean. You're not doing any like regular expression to parse out these markdown files. So I'm using Common Markdown, which gives you the attributes at the top, so like the published at the top, and allows you to do that. I'm now doing that same thing with my blog posts. So if all my blog posts are all in Markdown, like with the attributes at the top. So I have another thing I want to talk about on the site, but do you have any questions, or do you have some cool things you like to do on your site?
Well, I was going to say this very clever that you have all of this like automated. I think I mentioned
it did take a little bit of time, but now it's
really
completely
clever.
It's off. Yeah,
it's really cool. I wish I could do that. I think I mentioned it before, but my personal site, I know this is sacrilegious, but my personal site's not built in Laravel. It's a Next.js site hosted on for for free, because I didn't want to pay for it.
$6.
I'm cheap.
Yeah.
So like I can't do any of the fancy stuff that you have. I wish I could, because that sounds awesome. I would love to have something very similar to what you have, of like that it just automatically pulls in the latest episode, and there's just a little tab on my site that says, oh yep, podcast episodes, and it lists them out. And so now I think at this point, that I love to rebuild my website. I rebuild it like every year or every other year. I just like completely trash the old one, go with completely new. I really, really want to try to do that this year. I would love to move it to cloud, but it's too expensive for me, so I'm just going to keep it on Next.js for now.
A little side note on cloud. I want to talk about cloud on this show, because I'm glad you brought that up. But I tried cloud. I totally forgot to mention on here, but tried cloud. We'll talk about it here in a bit.
Okay.
But yeah, it gives me a reason to try Laravel things. I actually want to try Wayfinder, but I don't have a React site or anything to play with it now. So
yeah.
But it gives me a good reason to try the Laravel's new stuff. And so just a personal site. I also have my church website, which is also completely automated. Like they have their events page, which pulls from an API where they go and add like things that are happening. And then like when
hang on, do you have a gateway pattern on that API by chance?
I don't, but
that would have been a great callback.
Yeah, for sure. But
no, I'm just messing with you.
The like for when there's a service on Sunday morning, it'll check the YouTube API to look if there's a live stream scheduled, and then it'll automatically make it as a post, or like a message post, like a model.
Cool.
So it'll automatically put it up there. But this is the really neat part is the pastor, he liked when I would name the titles, and I told him, like, I'm just putting your transcript through ChatGPT, and it's like I kind of note down some like what I think would be good, and then I'll put it through ChatGPT, and it like gives me some like really good ones, because he never like came up with the title for his message. And so what I would do, I would take his entire transcript, put it in ChatGPT. So now what I'm doing is I go and download the MP3 from YouTube. I transcribe it using OpenAI's Whisper API, which because YouTube's captions don't come out for like 3 or 4 days, and they're highly inaccurate. And so I go get from Whisper, which the API costs for like an hour of audio is like 30 cents. So just for full transparency, it's not bad here. Then I turn around and take the transcript, save it to my database. So I turn around and ask it again and say, hey, using this context here, Ignore the music in the beginning, ignore like the prayers, whatever, just get the message part of that, the meat of the message. What would be the best title for that? And also, what would be a short description for that? And it gives me some ideas. So then it sends me an email with the signed URL link of like some ideas, and I click the link and I massage the title slightly if it's like some weird AI stuff, words are generated, and hit save. It's like, so I can either just let it roll and I get a good generic title, or which I get an email about. So if I was like, oh, that's not quite right, that's not what I heard, yeah. So or if so it's pretty much completely automated. So automate your life, folks. It's just so nice of like, just, I don't know, when you get those emails, or when, like I said, that pull request comes through for like the new podcast episode, makes it super easy.
Super clever that you're using AI for that. I kind of like that.
Yeah,
I know a lot of people will like cringe at the AI, but the fact that you're like just essentially feeding the AI the whole video, and it's just like it's literally listening to it and saying, "Hey, this is probably good."
Yeah,
that's wild.
Yeah. I come up with my own title, but then it's like they'll provide even a better one. So what I do is I tell it, give me five options. I'll usually choose one of the 5, and by default, if I do nothing, it'll automatically if I do nothing, if it doesn't hear from me before noon, like if I don't go click one of the links and edit it, it'll automatically post the first suggestion. So, which I'm always on top of anyway, but. So I kind of have to know to disable that scheduled thing if I'm going on vacation or something. But it makes it super easy to just automate everything. It's really nice.
So listen, Andy, very clever of you. Very clever.
Yeah. So the last thing I'll leave you with on personal websites of one more automation to do. And so I just have way too much fun with these things. If I make a public pull request to like Laravel framework, Laravel docs, I have a component in there which goes to the GitHub API, pulls all of my public PRs, and then puts them in a list. So if you go to my website, it says, and I think I've talked about this on the show before, but if you go to my website, it says like what just about me, what I've been writing about, like blog posts, what I've been talking about, like the podcast, and then what I've been working on. So it'll be any of my public PR. So I'll make like a PR to docs, and I actually have one coming soon for the framework I'm wanting to work on. And so it just like provides a list in there of all the PRs I've done. And so it just makes it really easy I don't do a thing. It refreshes daily. It just goes to the GitHub API, refreshes and caches it. So, but it's just a simple Blade component using the GraphQL, which I hate GraphQL, but using GraphQL is the only way I can, because I just wanted to make one API request to GitHub. And before I had to make a request to get all my PRs, and then I had to make another request to get the contents of the PRs. And then I'd have to make another request to see the code, because I wanted to show like lines changed or something. I don't know. I just kind of adding a little stuff to it. And GraphQL is a way to do that. Yeah. So
you're spoken like a true content creator, Andy.
Yeah, just
automating all just like this content publication type stuff.
Yeah, just like it's just yourself, and you don't. How many times do you like set it up like, man, I love this, and then you just let it go, but you don't keep it updated or whatever. You have to go manually do it. I don't do a thing. It's just like I get a pull request. I'm like, yep, it looks good. So.
Interesting. So here, I ironically, I just thought of this idea because I went to your website. You talk about these things like automating the GitHub contributions to add to your site, and then you talk about feeding the AI this video to produce titles. But what if you fed ChatGPT this podcast and said, "Hey, look for any time that I'm talking as you, as Andy Hinkle, when I'm talking about building something like this." And then write it into a blog post for you, publish it to your website. So when you're talking about writing these GraphQL API endpoints to pull in your contributions, that would be a great blog post. But you're not going to sit there and rewrite the same thing that you just said, but you have it in video recordings. You send it to ChatGPT, or just essentially take this transcript, send that to ChatGPT. It makes you a great blog post already.
I love it. And it's all
like this gateway pattern. If you're going to automate it, that's a great way to automate some blog posts.
I think, I love that idea. Yeah, I have to really put some thought into that because I've been wanting to like. I haven't the last one I wrote, but it was back in February, and I have like 3 ideas I want to do like for posts, and it's just like just time is just there's
It's
no time to do
still
anymore.
it's still you. Like I can see
Right.
where some people are like, this is just an AI blog, but
AI generated post, yeah.
it's still you. AI is just going to massage it into a better written format. But if you could do it clever enough, you could have a link to the timestamp of this podcast where you literally just talk about
Cross reference.
the thing.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. I have some.
There you go.
Yeah, definitely
That's
have
a
some.
freebie.
Love it. Yeah, thank you for the idea. Definitely get my wheels turning there. Maybe at least if it gets me a starting point, it'd be kind of cool. Like, hey, you guys talked about this. Maybe you write a blog post. Just some like.
exactly.
That's where I want AI to go. And one day is to like, hey, if it's looking at my database, so like, hey, you maybe want to include an index over here, just like some, just like your helpful coworker or something like coming in, like, hey, you may want to do this, or you talked about this, maybe you want to write about it. It'd be kind of interesting. So, yeah, that'd be kind of the cool way to see AI to go to. Yeah, I'll have to give that a shot. Love it.
Mm-hmm. Let me know. Follow up. If I
And
see
wanna
some
make-
AI generated blog posts on your website, I will require a 5 cents royalty per blog post. Thank you.
I love it. Yeah, I want to make mine open source too. That way, like I talk about on the show, that way people can see what I'm talking about, and they can feel free to reuse this, guys. Like if when I'm able to get it from the open source, and then you feel free to use the components, and so that would be like one of the blog posts. One of the blog posts I was talking about doing is like the GitHub contributions thing. That's like one thing I wanted to like code or to write about, and then people can reuse it or whatever. So.
Be real. I know. We're gonna get to some more AI stuff in here in just a second, but it'd be real weird if you had an AI generated blog post detailing the things that you use to generate said AI generated blog posts.
If it could just generate me a post and then I could just go through and do it right the way I would. Yeah, I would. Like I talk about it and it takes my words, but then I could kind of massage it a bit. So yeah, definitely a good idea.
Clever.
Cool. We talked about Cloud. I want to talk about that real quick. I tried Cloud.
Yeah. Okay.
And
I
don't know, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not for me. At least for small sites, I can like we talked about the one show. There's a site that clearly like it's the perfect candidate for like using something like that for a bigger site. But I tried using a personal site on there, and the GitHub contribution things, I need cache for that. Like I get the list and I cache it. And so the caching alone, I think it starts at $8 a month or something like that. I might be wrong on that, but it's like we start out and you only pay for compute, which then you can allow your database to sleep, you can allow your application to sleep, but then you also pay for a cache storage, which is like just a small fee a month. And like I don't know, I talked about this the last show of like I'm not gonna fix something that's not broken yet. It's. The only appeal to me is like I have everything. I have everything on Cloud. I don't have DigitalOcean and Forge. It's just everything's there. So I would end up getting it working. But once I got to the whole cache thing, I'm like, man, just add a cache. Like that's the only thing I'm caching on there. And like just to add one cache layer is like $8 just for. But I don't know.
Much.
I don't mean to be a cheapskate or anything like that. But it was just
I am.
I get it. It was just like it's just not for me. And like for smaller sites, for my church site, same thing there. It's just like I need cache. I'm not, and we don't get a lot of traffic. And then over on like some of the bigger sites, absolutely. Like we'll pay that $8 or whatever it ends up being, but it's just it's definitely more tailored for bigger sites. So.
Yeah, I think we mentioned it before, and I want to reiterate it again. There's a great opportunity for like a middle ground pricing point, from like the free sandbox one where you don't get any like domains, and the production one, which is like $20 a month, and you get unlimited domains or whatever. Like I would love to just pay per domain. If I've got one site, let me pay like I don't know $4.99 a month for that one site plus the whatever the compute stuff is. Right, just let me do that.
Yeah,
like $5 a month plus compute. I would spend the same amount hosting my personal site there as if I would have gotten a Forge subscription and used a small DigitalOcean droplet. Like I would probably be saving money, and that would make me switch.
Yeah,
Food for thought.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I got my first cloud bill, and it was like $7 or something. Like, what the heck? I thought it was in.
Yeah.
It was in, what do you call it?
Sandbox. It was in like the
Sandbox.
like in
but what do you?
the
What's
free
the
tier.
what's the
or
thing you
whatever.
call it to sleep?
Oh, hibernation.
Yeah, I got the first bill, and I thought it was in hibernation mode. And then so I was like, what the heck? I thought the site was offline or something, or at least, it'd be slow to boot up if it was in hibernation mode most of the time. I go to the thing, it was like, you must redeploy to enable hibernation mode. I'm like, oh, well, okay. So I just didn't catch that the first time. But, I mean, that was on me. But I redeployed, and then now it's in hibernation. But again, it's just like, it's like I really want to like it, but I just think it's more tailored for bigger sites. So totally fine.
Yeah.
But, yeah. And we talked about AI a bit ago. And some of how I've been using it lately has been kind of migrated. I used to when I needed to reach for it, I would go to ChatGPT, like the website, or Claude, the website, and type in whatever I have going on. I've been giving Cursor a try lately, and I've been really liking it, the agent mode. But it's like, sometimes it just like changes things I don't want to change. It'll be like, hey, I'll give an example, like, hey, what would you change about this code, or can you clean this up to, like, one big one that it's just monotonous. I hate that word. One big one that I challenge with is like when you want just stuff that takes a while, and that's converting something from like an array to a collection. And so just like, hey, so I'll feed it to there, like, hey, Cursor, can you change this? Currently it's an array. One thing that really bugs me about when in arrays is like if you have that temporary variable in like a loop of it, like, so you'll have like temporary variable at the top, and then it runs through an array and fills that array by the result. That drives me nuts. So I'm like, hey, nope, put that in a collection. And so, but anyway, I'm like, hey, refactor this to a collection, please, and it'll do that. But then like it'll change some other stuff completely irrelevant. It'll be like, hey, also I noticed down here that you can use a null coalesce operator, and by using that, it's like it doubled up on null coalesce operators. There's like 2 of them now, or like that just makes it even like uglier and harder to read. Just like that's not what I asked for. And so it's been. I think they're called hallucinations, is what they say in the AI space of like when that happens, like when you tell it to do something and it kind of goes on its own path and does something else. But it's been a lot of that going on lately. It used to be really good, like and then just recently, I was like, what the heck's going on here? And then VS Code had an update. And they kind of have this agent mode now too, and it's really good. And so I've been using a bit of that. But again, it's just like there's just a lot of cruft in there, and I'm starting to really tell when something is AI generated when I see a code review or something of like or vibe coded, And so and it's just like, I don't know where it's like there's a lot of good in it, because you can, like I said, you can convert those arrays to collections or do something that takes you time to work through. You can use AI, but has your workflow, your workflow interacting with AI changed recently? Because I feel like mine is definitely like just in the past couple months have really like changed the way I code. Of like, for me, and I'm curious what you think, but for me, if I see a task that's like, I know how I'm going to do this, and it's really just going to take time, so I'm going to see if I can eliminate some of it with Cursor or with VS Code. But has it changed in recent months for you?
It hasn't changed like a lot, but I have used it a lot more in the last like 2 or 3 months than I have in a year or so. I use it primarily like I'll stub out something that I want. Like I need to write this query that gets, these records within this date time for this organization. I'll write that out and it works. But when I push it to production and that query has to then query, millions and millions of records, it takes too long.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just highlight the code in my editor. I use PHP Storm. Don't fight me. JetBrains AI is garbage. It's good to hear that VS Code has a better one.
What?
But I use GitHub.
Real quick, what does JetBrains AI use under the hood? Do you know? Like,
I have no idea.
Okay.
I think you could choose your model, and I was choosing Claude 3.5. Is that a model? I think I was using that, and it was not good. I think the integration in the IDE sucks, which is weird because it's their own product, but whatever. I disabled it. I use GitHub Copilot, so I've been finding myself highlighting code and say, hey, how can I make this query faster? Or how could I build a trend that says, get me, over the last 7 days, get me all of the counts for this model for this organization, and put it in a collection based on the day. So that way I have a collection of 7 days, and it has counts for those stuff. I've been using it a lot for that, instead of like, oh, hey, I need to write this query. Let me go to AI first and tell it to write me the query, and then I'll massage it afterwards. I'll write it, and then I'll have AI massage it. And then I'll massage the AI's massage. Does that make sense? That's that's my workflow. It's like I already know I've got it in my head. Just let me get it out real quick, and if it's not great, then I'll have AI double check it. They've even had like in GitHub, you could use GitHub Copilot as a reviewer for PRs. Have you seen this recently?
Yeah, it doesn't support PHP though, right?
I don't think so, because it didn't do anything to any of my PRs. I did it as a reviewer for some of my PRs, and it's just like, yeah, it looks good. I was like, all right.
Yeah, that's what it did for me too.
You didn't do anything.
Like, yeah.
So when it does that, I think that would be my ideal AI solution or AI implementation for how I program. I'll write it. I'll have it review my PR before I send it to somebody else to have them review the PR. Like, there's some obvious junk that, like you said, where you declare that variable, empty array, for each, add that into the array, boom, return the array at the end. Like, that's dumb. You can use a collection if it's Laravel. Like, just flag that for me. Stuff like that. I wish it would do more stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree with when you tag in a reviewer, that would be just kind of nice to know before I have the team review it. Like, hey, just take a quick look at this. Like, some of it just can be noise, but some of it might actually be useful, and so that would be kind of nice to. There's some startup companies that are doing that. Like, they're say, hey, add our app to your organization, we'll review your code for security vulnerabilities, whatever. But I feel like GitHub is like, no, we're gonna take that money, we're gonna roll it, because I feel like they're just doing anything they can get their hands on with AI. They're wanting to do so. They're an AI company now versus a software or a software building company, which kind of bugs me. Like, just focus on like Git, and like, yeah, AI is great, but you have a great product, just keep at it. Yeah, so.
They got all that Microsoft money now.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask you, like, what's specific about the Cursor IDE that's like radically different than VS Code or PHP Storm, like the AI integration specifically.
Yeah, I felt like recently the agent mode was by far my favorite thing. Which I tried Cursor like many months ago, and I just didn't get it. I'm just like, I don't know what all the hype is for this thing. Then recently, one of my coworkers, shout out Chris Law is his name. He was big into Cursor, and he was like, hey, you should really check it out. And I was like, yeah, give it a shot, because I knew it's using VS Code under the hood. So I gave Cursor a try, and they have this agent mode on there, which instead of like previously on VS Code can only read a single file. Like, if you just give it a single file and tell it like what you're trying to do, you might have to give it some context from other relating files. Cursor is intelligent enough to, like, you tell it the prompt, and it'll start navigating through your code to figure out what's connected to what, and it pieces everything together.
That's pretty cool.
And says, like, you can literally tell it to like install something, or one of my things is like, I told it to uninstall Telescope. And not only did it like Composer uninstall, it'll actually run commands for you. It'll ask you like, are you sure you want to run this? Like Composer, remove Telescope, like Laravel Telescope package. And then it'll go through and it will create the migrations to remove the records, the existing records. And I was like, what? So like remove the Telescope records.
Okay.
It's like, that's great. That's what I wanted to do. It did have some issues, like it created them in the wrong order, so like you got 4 key constraint issues, so I had to like flip those around. But just like little stuff, I'm like, this works, like I'm happy with this, like, and flip it around. So but yeah, it did that. It's really good at navigating through the code. But in a recent VS Code update, they have agent mode now, and it's not as good as Cursor, but it's still pretty darn good. And but I prefer just VS Code. I feel like Cursor is just too noisy. I like code editors that are really clean. I anything that is in my space and that I see, it has to be for a very good reason. If it's you shouldn't have things on there just adding noise to your to your code editor. Okay. So I just felt like I was just a me thing. I could probably work with Cursor a bit more and get it to like where I want it to be. And also my keyboard shortcuts are really like weird. They have a bunch of new keyboard shortcuts over in Cursor, and it just overrode like some of the keyboard shortcuts I had in VS Code. So I was like, but I'm super happy with the update VS Code lately. But yeah, I just to answer your question, I just love how it navigates through the tree, like understanding your code base.
All right, I haven't tried it, but I know that you've tried it, and a couple. I think Kevin Kirscher.
Shout out Kevin.
I think he tried it once, and he was telling me about it. But I might need to just poke around and see. Problem is that I've used PHP Storm for so long that if I use anything else, it like hurts me on the inside, like emotionally it hurts me.
I feel the same way with VS Code, but I don't know. I'm okay with leaving VS Code these days, but Jake uses Jake uses PHP Storm. I just can't get behind it. I don't know. Can't do it. Yeah,
come to the dark side, Andy.
Just don't use JetBrains API or AI. It sucks.
Does PHP Storm still have that debug tester? Like when you're in your PHP code, it's like open this in Safari or Chrome or whatever, and that's just like why do they still have that darn thing? It just no one uses that.
You could disable it and customize it. So like I had it like open in Brave instead. I don't want to get.
Do you ever use that?
No, hell no.
Okay.
I don't want to get off on a super big tangent here, so I'm going to keep this quick. There are some things about PHP Storm that really irritate me. There's a new update that just came out, the 2025.1, and they changed how you can commit. The commit modal, it used to, whenever I did Command K, it always opened up this commit modal, and it showed me all of my changed files in the namespaces that they were. So if it was like app controllers, it would be in this nice little directory. They changed that. It's now in a sidebar, and it's just all of my files, willy-nilly, no order, no namespace, and I hate it.
Yeah,
I hate it.
Yeah, huh? Well, have they got any community feedback on that? Have you like looked at see it?
I think it just came out like yesterday.
Okay, yeah.
And so I was like, oh yeah, I'll update this. Yeah, no, don't do that. I feel like one of those things where like they changed, it was working fine. Don't change it. Mm-hmm. Now all of I hate it. That's probably the only thing I hate about it.
I don't like the one in VS Code either. I have also a shortcut, or like a command, but it pop opens my terminal, and then it has the history below it, and I just type in the commit message. It's the very old school way of doing a commit message, but it makes it so simple because I just didn't like having to either move my mouse or navigate over there, and it was kind of like, again, it was very noisy. I just want to like hit a button, type in my commit. But before I do that, just a quick look at what files I have going on, make sure I'm not like committing, credentials or, something weird like that. But I found it kind of just too noisy, but yeah.
Keyboard warrior, aren't you? I don't mind.
I'm trying to.
Clicking.
I'm trying. I'm starting to really recognize, and this comes from the Primogen because it's his, how he moves through like his code. It's all by keyboard. It's very inspirational. He flies through, he uses Vim. NeoVim, but he flies through his code editor, and it's just like, and it makes me like think when I'm coding, like anytime I reach for my mouse, like can I stop that habit some way? Like when I go in, one thing I'm trying to figure out right now is when I go to look up a file tree, like how I can start to eliminate like me going over to the file tree so many times, like clicking through my files and looking for a particular thing. But anyway,
I agree a little bit. I still like to click, especially for my commits. Like I want to be very specific about what's in my commits and what's not in my commits. But recently, I installed, again, this is a tangent. I apologize. I installed this like keyboard alerter thing plugin in PHP Storm. So it's like whenever you do common tasks over and over and over again, it'll just alert you like, oh hey, use this shortcut instead. So yeah, I've used my mouse. I'm like, okay, I need to go to this controller, this page controller. Okay, click apps, click control or HTTP controllers. There it is, and it's like, oh, you just click the double click shift, and you could search for it, and it'll open it up for you. So now I've just been using that every day.
Hot tip, yeah.
For multiple, I just boom, double
PHP
shift,
Storm.
page controller, enter, opens up what I need to, and if I need to do the test, I can do the same thing, right? Page controller test, boom, I'm done.
Is that like a community extension that you installed for that?
It's a plugin for PHP Storm. It's like
Okay.
key promoter or something, whatever. Just
Have
like
to-
it listens to whatever you do, and it's like, oh yeah, just this is the shortcut for that. You don't have to keep clicking this button every time. So,
I'll have to look for that for VS Code. Yeah,
I've been-
that's a
I've been
great
trying.
idea. I
I've been
kind of
trying.
poke you, nudge you in the right direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out.
Cool. All right. Well, I think we're at time. Would you like to close us out?
Yes. Thank you all very much for listening to this episode of the Midwest Artisan. That's Andy. I've been Dalton. If you got any comments, any feedbacks, let us know in wherever you're watching this at. There's multiple places, but shout out to you. We love you and we appreciate you. Until next time. Peace.
Tune in for our next episode of Hockey Talk.
Hockey Talk. That's our new podcast name. Hockey
Yeah.
Talk.
All right. See you, folks.
All right.